If Ted Bundy walked into this room right now, you wouldn't feel afraid, you would feel charmed. He wasn't the monster lurking in the shadows that movies teach us to fear. He was the man you hoped your daughter would marry. He was educated, soft-spoken, impeccably dressed in turtlenecks and blazers. He volunteered for the Republican Party. He was a law student who spoke passionately about justice. To the outside world, he was a rising star, a promising young man destined for a career in politics. But while he was shaking hands by day, he was hunting by night. Between 1970 and 1978, young women across America began to vanish. They disappeared from college campuses, from sorority houses, and from crowded parks. This is not just the story of a serial killer. This is the story of how normalcy can be weaponized, how a handsome face can hide a void where a human soul should be. This is the story of Ted Bundy, the killer who hid in plain sight. To understand the monster, you have to look at the foundation. And Ted Bundy's foundation was built on a lie so massive, it fractured his reality. Theodore Robert Cowell was born in 1946. Ted grew up in a Philadelphia home that held a dark secret. For the first several years of his life, he was told that his grandparents were his parents, and that his mother, Louise, was his older sister. It was a cover-up designed to hide the shame of his illegitimate birth, but the deception went deeper. His grandfather, Samuel Cowell, was a tyrannical figure who was violent, abusive, and prone to rages. Young Ted watched this man dominate the household through fear. When Ted finally discovered the truth, that his sister was his mother and his life was a fabrication, something inside him broke. Psychologists and biographers later theorized that this moment planted a deep-seated resentment toward women and a desperate need to control his own narrative. He learned a dangerous lesson as a child: truth is flexible. If you smile wide enough and lie confident enough, you can create your own reality. By the time he reached the University of Washington, the mask was complete. Ted wasn't just blending in, he was excelling. Ironically, he worked at a suicide prevention hotline. He sat next to a woman named Enrule, a former police officer who would later write the definitive biography on him. She recalls him as empathetic, kind, and calm under pressure. He saved lives over the phone. But there was a trigger. In college, he fell in love with a wealthy, sophisticated woman often referred to as Stephanie. When she dumped him for lacking ambition, Ted was devastated. He spent years reinventing himself, transforming into the perfect, successful man just to win her back. And he did. He won her back, got her to fall in love with him again. And then he abruptly cut all contact. It was his first act of total dominance. But breaking a heart wasn't enough. The rage he felt toward his mother, toward Stephanie, toward his own mediocrity, began to boil over. He started stalking women, not just any women, but women who resembled his ex-girlfriend. Long dark hair, parted in the middle, young, beautiful. The perfect Ted went to law school while the real Ted began to buy supplies: a ski mask, a crowbar, handcuffs. Most serial killers in the 1970s were viewed as loners or drifters. Bundy shattered that profile. He didn't hide in the bushes, he hunted in the open. His weapon of choice wasn't a gun, it was sympathy. He developed a terrifyingly effective ruse. He would wear a fake plaster cast on his arm or leg. He would fake an injury. He would approach women in parking lots or near libraries, dropping his books or struggling to load a sailboat onto his VW Beetle. He would ask, politely, "Could you help me?" It was a masterstroke of psychological manipulation. He weaponized female socialization, the instinct to be helpful, to be kind. Take the case of July 14, 1974, Lake Sammamish, a crowded beach with thousands of people. Bundy approached Janice OTT, asking for help with his sailboat. Witnesses saw her go with him. Hours later, he returned and did the exact same thing to Denise Naslund. He abducted two women in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses, just for hours apart. Once they reached his car, he forced them in. Bundy had removed the passenger seat of his Beetle, creating a hidden cavity where he could conceal his victims. By the time they realized the door was closed shut, it was too late. How did he get away with it for so long? You have to understand the era. The 1970s was a data dark age. There were no cell phones, no CCTV cameras on street corners, no national DNA database. Police departments in different counties didn't share files. They didn't even use the same radio frequencies. Bundy exploited this. He crossed state lines constantly, moving from Washington to Utah to Colorado. To the police, these were isolated incidents. Witnesses at Lake Sammamish described a handsome man driving a VW Beetle. They even released a sketch. But because Bundy looked so generic, so normal, thousands of tips flooded in. But the police dismissed him. Why? Because a law student with no criminal record didn't fit their profile of a maniac. His normalcy was his greatest shield. The perfect facade finally cracked in Utah, and it cracked because of one mistake. He let someone live. In November 1974, Bundy approached 18-year-old Carol DaRonch at a shopping mall. He pulled his usual routine. "I'm a police officer. Someone tried to break into your car." He got her into his Volkswagen. But as he tried to handcuff her, Carol fought. She fought for her life. She threw herself out of the moving car and flagged down help. Her testimony was the key. For the first time, Ted had a face. In 1975, a patrol officer spotted Bundy loitering in a neighborhood at 2 a.m. When they searched his car, they found the murder kit. A ski mask, a crowbar, handcuffs, and pantyhose with eye holes cut out. Bundy was arrested. The mask had officially slipped. Bundy was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for murder. But he wasn't planning on a trial, he was planning a performance. Because he was a law student, he was allowed to work in the courthouse library without handcuffs. In June 1977, during a recess, he simply jumped out of a second-story window and vanished into the mountains. He was caught 6 days later, but Bundy wasn't done. 6 months later, he escaped again. This time, he carved a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell, crawled through the ductwork, and walked out the front door. By the time they realized he was gone, he was already halfway to Florida, and this time, he was done being careful. On the night of January 14, 1978, Bundy entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. There was no charm here, no caste, no "can you help me?" This was pure, unadulterated rage. In less than 15 minutes, he attacked 4 women, killing 2 of them. He then broke into another house down the street and attacked another student. It showed a killer who had completely lost control. The sophisticated law student was gone. All that was left was the monster. After the carnage at the Chi Omega sorority house, Tallahassee went into total lockdown. But the man they were hunting had already slipped through the net. For 3 weeks, Ted Bundy drifted like a ghost across northern Florida. He was driving stolen cars and living off stolen credit cards, staying just one step ahead of the FBI. Then, on February 9, 1978, tragedy struck again. This time, he didn't wait for the cover of darkness. In Lake City, he brazenly abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach right from her junior high school campus. It was reckless, it was desperate, and it was his final confirmed murder. 6 days later, 400 miles away in Pensacola, a patrol officer spotted a stolen orange Volkswagen Beetle. When the officer approached, the driver attacked him and tried to flee. But after a violent struggle, the handcuffs snapped shut. Bundy was finally captured, but the circus was just beginning. His trial in Florida became the first nationally televised court case in history. And Bundy loved it. He insisted on acting as his own attorney. He wore suits, interviewed witnesses, and played to the cameras. He even proposed marriage to his girlfriend, Carolyn Boone. While she was on the witness stand, he treated the trial like a game. He thought he could outsmart the judge, the jury, and the FBI. But he ignored the one thing he couldn't charm away. Physical evidence, specifically, a bite mark he had left on one of the Chi Omega victims. Forensic dentists matched the unique jagged pattern of his teeth to the injury. It was the nail in his coffin. Ted Bundy was sentenced to death. He spent his final years on death row, desperately trying to trade information for more time. He confessed to over 30 murders, though experts believe the true number could be over 100. On January 24, 1989, the charm finally ran out. As he was led to the electric chair, there were no cameras. No fans, no applause, just the cold reality of justice. Ted Bundy wanted to be remembered as special, as a genius. But in the end, he was just a man who stole the futures of innocent women because he couldn't handle his own inadequacy. The mask is gone. And we must never forget what was underneath. Outro. Remembering the lives. We often remember the name of the monster, but we too easily forget the names of those he silenced. We talk about his intelligence and his charm, but we forget their brilliance and their light. They were not just victims. They were students. They were daughters. They were friends. They were young women with entire lives ahead of them. Careers they would have built, families they would have raised, and memories they would have made. Janice OTT, Denise Naslund, Karen Campbell, Lyndon Healy, Susan Rancourt, Roberta Parks, and so many others. Let us not give Ted Bundy the final word. Let us give it to them. May they rest in peace.